What are your feelings on seed oils?
Seed oils?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be bad for you or something?
I don't know. I was informed that it's very bad for us. Hello, Nana. Thank you for inviting us into your studio today, and thank you for being a guest on the show. I've said this to you before specifically, but I wanted to tell the audience, you were the first artist to actually approach me and say that you liked the show and wanted to be on it right after it started airing. So I'm really excited to see this through finally.
It was a vibe from the start, so I was like,
Yeah.
We gotta do something.
Yeah, I mean, from the moment I met you, I was like, this is the coolest girl in the room every time. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, you're primarily known as a painter and a filmmaker, but just after your MFA, you had some forays into sculpture with pieces like Willy Wonka.
Yeah. I'm a bad sculptor. I am.
I won't comment.
That says a lot.
What made you take that quick foray and then immediately be like, no, I'm better at filming and painting?
Well, the funny thing is that actually when I started studying at the first academy in Slovenia, not the traditional one, but the more kind of like contemporary-oriented one, they were pushing us to try ourselves in different disciplines. So like the first task was a painting project, then there was a sculpture installation, etc. Like you had to go through all these different mediums basically and like learn something from that. And I think also one thing that was very specific to Slovenia, especially at that time, was that painting was sort of considered dead, kind of like in post-Malevich type, mindset. You had to be doing like new media, like working with video or installation in order to be considered contemporary and relevant, especially in terms of institutional presence. So they were really kind of like focusing on us developing certain parts of this more conceptual, theoretical, and also like interdisciplinary practice, which worked fine for me eventually, but I think I came in as basically someone that loved painting and was a bit discouraged, and that was kind of tough for me. But through that, I started like working with sculpture as well, and that kind of dragged into my MFA. But then at some point I was like, okay, I think what actually I want to be doing is like thinking through film, but then using, that for basically like starting points for painting and like sound installation, which is what I do now.
You grew up in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Can you tell us about that? Slovenia was a very young country at the time.
Yes, I was born in '94. Slovenia was just a few years old at the time. It was right after the fall of Yugoslavia. So still kind of in a transitional phase from socialism to some sort of capitalism, if you can call it. It's not what we have in the States, it's different, but yeah, it was definitely changing a lot at the time, and I think my growing up was like influenced by that kind of like still pretty socialist system. For example, I know you love makeup. I was obsessed with like doing my makeup and all of that stuff, but we didn't have any of the brands like MAC Cosmetics and everything that was popular in 2010s or like late 2000s when I was kind of coming of age. So there was always just that sort of like longing for things that you would see on the screen. This kind of like that longing or like that sort of imagination of the world that we were presented with, but was not like immediately part of like our experience, really kind of affected the way, I do the work now as well.
The Fujine district and much of Ljubljana have been featured in film. We talked about this extensively when preparing for the interview. Is that where your love of film started?
No, I think my love of film actually, I think it first developed through just how much my father actually loved like just watching films like on TV or, going to the cinema. I think I remember clearly when he took me for the first time to see, how's it called? Chickens on the Run, I guess? Like, what was the English translation? It's like it's a cartoon from, I guess, like late 90s, early 2000s.
Is it the one where the aliens come and he's like the little chicken dude? Because that's Chicken Little.
No, I don't remember the plot entirely, but it's in kind of like farm, and they're all like made out of this like plasticine type thing. Chicken
Chicken Run.
Run. There we go.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, because in Slovenian it's kokoške na begu, which means like chickens on the run. Anyway, close enough. Yeah, so I remember going to the cinema with my dad at that point, and that was like a really beautiful experience. And then just kind of like appreciating how much he absorbed of like, you know, especially the Westerns were a huge thing for like, I think, Balkan men of that generation. My dad was born in the 50s. So yeah, I think I picked up a bit of that from him. And then I think the other very formative thing for me in terms of just like film appreciation was actually a boyfriend I had when I was 16. He was massively into film, just like about to apply to the film school. And he introduced me to, you know, all the more like cinephile, sort of like niche filmmakers. He was hugely into like David Lynch as well, and Roman Polanski, all these kind of like, you know, yeah, kind of classic things. So I think that was sort of the start. That's what opened the door to that whole world. Yeah.
When would you say art became a major part of your life?
I kind of grew up with it. I always wanted to just draw and paint, and that was always kind of like intuitive to me. I was very shy as a kid, if you can imagine, painfully shy. And it was also like one of the first things that I've tried myself at that I really like received a lot of like support and encouragement from. And I think that makes like a huge impact when you're a kid, when like your teacher, your parents like, oh, I think you're kind of good at this, you should stick with it. My parents sort of like quite strict upbringing, especially my dad's like a very disciplined guy and doesn't love like loud sounds or like, you know, any sort of like disturbances in the household. So I think when I started, you know, expressing interest in like playing electric guitar, and you know, I was massively into like metal and rock and so on, my parents were like, I think you should stick to painting and drawing because it's kind of silent and like you're not bothering anyone. We also like lived in an apartment, so you know, your neighbors get annoyed if you're like blasting your guitar on like amplifiers or something.
So you go to school in Ljubljana and then you move to New York pretty soon after?
I was in Ljubljana until 2016 or 2017. Then I was in Leipzig for the exchange, and from Leipzig I moved to New York, spent some time here, and then I went to Goldsmiths in 2019. Yeah.
Which is my next question. So you leave and you go to Goldsmiths. Was that a dramatic change of pace for you?
Well, you know, if you get used to New York, which I kind of quickly did, it really felt natural, like within the first week when I arrived here in 2018. Going to London actually felt like slower paced and just, you know, very different culturally as well. It's just like, I think the way communication works, or just like the pace of things, or maybe even like the kind of ambition of the city is something that is, even with London, you know, you can't really compare it to, even though London is such an incredible city and has like an amazing artist community, it still felt like if you wanted to do the things that I set out to do, and also like the context I'm working in, which is much more like US influence because of like, I mean, just like the cinema, you know, that is primarily the territory of like the Americas. Since I got married, I was able to then also like come here on a green card, which helps because, you know, it's really tough to be like reapplying constantly for different O1s, and like it just gave me like an opportunity to like properly exist here and like do my work without, you know, other issues. It took me a lot longer to get settled in London, to be honest, than in New York. That's why I came back as well, because it just never felt like home entirely. But the studying experience was actually amazing, even though I was the COVID generation. Goldsmiths kind of has the main campus, and then they have this studio or like, I guess like studio space for the MFA students, which is separate of the main campus. So we were able to kind of exist in that bubble, and it became like a bit of like a ungoverned state in a sense, because it was like these 30 people in the program just like full on, creating their own rules during COVID. So we had a lot of fun, I'll say that. I mean, it wasn't by the book in terms of like what you should have, be sticking with during COVID, but I think we managed to really like both work hard and also just keep each other sane, because that was a tough time.
And you also got married during your MFA, correct?
I did.
Yeah.
During COVID as well, 2020.
And
I was not wasting a second.
did that dramatically change the work at the time?
No, I don't think it changed the work per se. I think it gave me a lot of support, because my ex-husband was just someone that was like often in studio with me, especially in terms of like the sculptural stuff, just like someone that's like very hands-on and just very like quick at getting shit done. So I felt really like supported during that time. So that was actually like really wonderful. But I don't think in terms of like themes and kind of like topics that it changed that as much. But a lot of like my love escapades definitely influenced the work. It's just not that period of my life that was influential.
You hit the ground running pretty hard. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I was really lucky, I guess. I don't know. I remember it was kind of like my career as an artist proper started immediately when the restrictions lifted, because I already had a bit of attention, and I was already selling some work out of the studio to just like, common like connections I had at that point, or just like people reaching out even through Instagram and so on. But like, through, I don't know, I guess like acquaintances or like friends or friends of friends, etc. I got invited to participate in this online exhibition, and I thought, who cares about an online show? It's basically a website that nobody's gonna open. But anyway, it was nice to be considered in any sort of show at that point, so I just wanted to show my work. And during that very intense lockdown period, I was actually like working really hard and had like quite a few pieces to show that were in the end included in this online show. And one of the works, which is this sort of like leather panned work, the very kind of red big painting, was probably the work that gave me a lot of visibility in 21. And by the time the MFA show rolled in, I kind of had already a lot of attention and like a lot of show offers and kind of galleries interested, and met some of like my dearest and closest collectors, and now also like friends. So in a way, I feel really blessed and like, just honored to be able to do this thing still in 25 and hopefully, ad infinitum.
Nana famously has this amazing kitchen, but really only makes raw food. She pretty much is a raw vegan at this point. Sure.
If steak counts.
Yeah. So today we're going to do Filling the Blank's first ever cooking segment, which I think I'm going to call Sam's Caffeinated Cooking Corner.
Who better than me to intro that?
Yeah.
Because I'm such a chef.
Yeah, you're such a chef.
Notoriously.
Yeah, notoriously a chef. And Sam just had Celsius for the second time in their life 5 minutes ago. So it's going to be a great episode.
Yes.
I think I could literally pick grains of sand out of your paintings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, Nana, take us through. What can I help you with? What do we have here? So we've got...
Okay, we've got green apples. They have to be Granny Smith. Don't put any other ones because they're going to be too sweet for it. We have cucumbers. We have, most importantly, celery, because it's like a celery heavy juice. It's basically a celery juice with a bit of like spices. And lemons for a bit of like bitterness. And like, I drink it every day in between my mushroom coffee and the first meal of the day, which is usually like eggs. So yeah, I'm not a vegan, but I don't cook a lot. I can boil an egg though. I swear.
Which we thought about just boiling an egg.
I know, but I think this one is a bit more special.
Yeah.
Anyone knows how to boil an egg, I guess. We're gonna chop these celery stems first. So today we're using a hand blender because at the studio we don't really have a cold press yet.
Yeah.
Maybe
We're gonna
that's
sell
like
some
a
paintings.
present.
Yeah.
Yes.
A collector who loves you and wants you to paint
Yes.
faster.
Yes. We need like a big cold press juicer right here for the next segment, but for this one, this will do. So yeah, primarily celery. You fill it up almost all the way, and then we're just adding a little bit of cucumber.
Which you're taking the skin off of?
Yeah, I just feel like I don't know, it just adds bitterness to have the skin as well, which would be a shame. We want it like nice and fresh, not like gross.
And how would you describe yourself as a cook? I know you said you're not really the greatest chef in the world, but how would you describe Nana as the chef?
Very visual. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna like arrange things nicely. If I make a salad, I'm always gonna like, do nice toppings, and it has to have like a lot of different things inside. Like always, like I don't know, either like cherry tomatoes or dried tomatoes, or cucumber is always nice. I like seeds as well, like sunflower seeds. It's like, and protein. There, you always need like a protein with a salad. Like I'm religious about that because you need like energy to work in the studio. Painting is a very physical and intense practice. Actually, I know it doesn't look like that, but when you're working on a large format canvas, you have to kind of like go up and down the ladder a lot, and you just have to be strong in order to be able to like finish the work properly. So yeah, you need your protein.
You're murdering this lemon.
I don't know why it's acting up like that, but anyway, we just need like half of a lemon.
Cheap Wegmans lemons. And are you ever worried about cross-contamination between paint and your food? Or do you enjoy the extra nutrients?
Well, if it adds a little bit of a kick.
Gamsol's a great seasoning. People don't know.
Yeah.
Salt, pepper, and Gamsol.
Okay, guys, I don't know why this is a weird lemon, okay? I've seen a lot of lemons in my life, but this one's like kind of weird. Anyway, it's already like a little bit softer and easier to blend now, so this is all perfect for
easier.
us. Yeah. So yeah, did you see there was a little bit of cucumber, like literally like
Tiny bit.
Tiny
thought
bit.
of a cucumber.
Yeah, half of lemon, the rest is celery, and now we're gonna add as a final touch a little bit of green apple. I literally do 1/8 of an apple. Okay, this is very particular, but like you don't want it too sweet. You just want like a little bit of like a scent of an apple.
You scare me so much with how you cut.
I mean, obviously you can see that I don't really do a lot in the kitchen, but I still have all my fingers.
Yeah, I clearly. Please don't lose them on our camera. I don't have insurance for that. Speaking of cross-contamination, have you ever wanted to eat paint? And if so, is there a specific color?
No. Why?
I'm just curious. No, because sometimes people are like, "Ooh, I want to eat all these soft things," and I'm like, I think that's just a form of neurodivergence.
Yeah, I think that's just weird, huh?
And can you tell me how, if you could eat the color purple, what it would taste like?
Like kind of, I don't know, like some kind of gummy thing, huh? Like I don't know, but actually no, it has to be a grapefruit. Not grape gummy.
Yeah.
Like a Haribo with grape flavor.
Yeah.
That's purple. I mean, it's
Not
a
grimace
no-brainer,
meat?
no? Not what?
Not grimace meat.
What is that?
Grimace is a McDonald's. He's a McDonald's character who's like a purple fuzzy dude.
Oh, that guy. Yeah,
And
he's a
there's-
cutie.
Mm-hmm.
We like him. Oh, now we're getting to a...
And the loud part, so we're gonna be quiet now. Well, not messing
Well,
with
we can still talk. I can still hear you. We're both very loud. And
we're very loud people.
I think we can make it work.
can yell over it. So right now, let me be a good chef. We just cut up all of our veggies and our fruits, and now we're blending them, and they look so beautiful.
Do you want to try?
I would love to try. Oh my
So
god.
you just,
Ninja, please sponsor us.
Ninja's great, by the way. You just gotta like really get into it. You have the muscles. I know you exercise. Just hold the bucket thingy. You're doing great, honey.
Oh wow, I'm actually doing pretty well.
Yeah, now it's gonna get easier once it's kind of, you just
There we go.
all the way through. Just make sure it's like all nice and blended. Yeah.
There we go. The up and down is the key, y'all.
Yeah.
The up and down is the key.
There we go.
I'm always obsessed with how when you blend stuff, the way that the blender like makes it spin. Wait. it's hard to do with this. Wow.
I think that could be it. No?
This is it?
I don't know. Do you feel like there's something?
I'm seeing some chunky.
Oh, okay. I mean, a little bit of chunky is fine.
It's good for the soul.
We just squeeze it out. We're just gonna squeeze.
Oh, we're gonna put it in this and
Oh
squeeze.
yeah, no, I'm not serving you like this
yeah.
much.
What am I doing?
No, that'd be gross.
I'm
We're
overworking
just careful with the blade now. You don't want to like. Okay, just take it out. Perfect. Amazing. All right. The next step is this little mesh.
I didn't drip on the clothing. I thought I dripped on the clothing. I did drip on the cards though.
So we're definitely not drinking this. This is gross. But
It tasted like ink and celery. Oh wow! So now after we blended
my
it.
hands are clean.
Mine are not, so I'm not touching it. I did just go to the bathroom and wash my hands, but I don't trust myself. And do you have a favorite food in the world?
Anything from McDonald's?
And you didn't know who Grimace was?
No.
You're
I mean,
just-
we probably have like different names for it in Slovenia or something. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. No, but I don't think it was that popular, like these characters. That,
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have like a death row meal? Is it McDonald's is your death row meal?
Death Romeo, what's that?
Like when you're put on to death by the U.S. government, they give you one last meal of your choosing.
Oh, shit. Actually, someone asked me that last time and I had a perfect answer, but I don't remember what I said. So let it be McDonald's. Yeah, I'd be very happy with that.
Uh-huh.
Because I have like an exact order every time I go to McDonald's.
What is it?
It's like 6 McNuggets,
Okay.
double cheeseburger,
Okay.
a McFlurry with Smarties, and Diet Coke, like medium size or like a large one, whatever. And that's it, yeah.
I have a
That's
very
my
similar
meal.
order.
Yeah.
It's the 6-piece. Back when I wasn't a lactose intolerant girly, I would get the double cheeseburger,
Yeah.
the McFlurry with Oreos, and then a Sprite. Because that Sprite can fry a person. Like, it's so bubbly.
I feel like every drink is better from a McDonald's
Well,
fountain.
it's actually true. They add they
add something?
So okay, back time from Sam. They basically had this math equation of how fast ice melts and how much it dilutes the sugar. So they basically because they buy so much from Coca-Cola, they mix in they add extra sugar and extra carbonation to combat the melting of ice. So if you don't put ice in your McDonald's drink, you're doing a disservice to yourself because it's not tasting the way that the food scientists intended for you.
Oh my god, so it's actually different. That's why it's
It's
so much
actually
nicer.
different soda, yeah.
Oh my god, okay, I was onto something all
You-
this time because I was like, it's legit better. Like,
Please,
I,
Nana Wolke, the observant artist.
yeah, I mean, I'm like a McDonald's sommelier. or
Yeah.
whatever.
I mean, I said in the intro, you have an incredibly perceptive nature.
Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you imagine?
And then I have one more question that's very important. What are your feelings on seed oils?
Seed oils?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be bad for you or something?
I don't know. I was informed that it's very bad for us.
The thing is, I like all the shitty stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of like, I eat very clean and, whatever. I like make my salads and celery juices and whatever. But then I'm going to like love a dirty burger from McDonald's or like, Five Guys or whatever. Like, I kind of like operate on both ends, like high and low really well. So I don't really care about these seed oils or organic and non-organic. I just, I just need to have like my celery juice and then the rest of it, whatever. Just feed me.
It offsets.
Yeah. And oftentimes when I have celery juice, I also have a cigarette while I'm drinking it. So I feel like I'm literally just, it's like it all just adds up to zero in the end.
Yeah.
It's all fine.
So like,
My doctor said I'm still very healthy, after all these years of smoking. I literally started at 14, so,
Yeah.
I must be doing something right.
and
right?
the best thing an artist can do for the value of their works is harm their own body. So.
Exactly.
Oh, we're adding ice cubes to it now.
We
Nana
have
likes her
to.
drinks very cold.
I need my ice cubes. I think it just elevates every drink. Like, it's just so much better. You wouldn't go to a bar and have like a nice drink without an ice. Unless it's a whiskey, then I like it neat. It's like a little chicken baby.
Okay. Are we ready to try it? Ooh, it's nice and cold now. The ice is melted.
There you go.
Cheers.
Na zdravie.
Wow, that is actually really good celery juice. Holy shit.
You weren't convinced.
I mean, I'm never convinced this much green is gonna taste good.
That's because you have a tiny bit of apple and you have
It's
like,
the apple and the lemon.
Yeah, it really just makes it so nice.
Yeah, wow. Eat your heart out, Juice Press.
Good.
That was beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to get back to the interview and talk more about Nana's fresh paintings.
And send us photos of your celery juices.
Oh, yeah.
If you make one.
If you make one,
tag
put it in the
us.
comments, tag us, at filling the blank, at Nana Wolke, or
Yes.
Wolke. Oh my God, I've been struggling with that all day.
You're doing good.
Thank you. Nana, I want to discuss some influences on your bodies of work. You've mentioned shame and its interaction with our lives in pretty much every single body of work and everything written about your work. Does any of it stem from the shame pillars in the town square of Ljubljana?
Oh wow! Where did you find? That's amazing that you found that out. Yeah. Well, Ljubljana is basically has this whole medieval portion of the history that has shame. I mean, there was a whole shame square with shame pillars and everything, which I actually referenced in my first solo show in Ljubljana. It was called a naughty corner, which is basically a form of punishment, and it was sort of referencing this whole historical part of it. And then I think the next show that I've done at Fondazione Coppola in 21 in Vicenza in Italy also had a bit of that maybe discomfort of growing up or coming from girlhood into adulthood and reminiscing some of these moments where you're testing your boundaries and kind of exploring fully, but you don't have that confidence yet. The show that I'm planning now, it doesn't have an exact date, but it will eventually happen in Sweden, where the Milan program is, which kind of influenced the urbanist layout of the neighborhood where I grew up as well. Will be explored but through a different lens, not shame, but more the idea of potential and youth that is growing up there, and kind of try and instill some of that confidence and just sort of celebration of the space instead of sort of focusing on the discomfort. So I think it's a part of my own growing up as well, or my formation, coming from shame to more topics of love and embracing certain parts of myself that I wasn't able to before.
And you mentioned your work, The Naughty Corner. At this time, you were collecting tons of dust?
That was my graduation work for my BA, yeah. That was that was really linked with shame as well, yeah. I was collecting dust from underneath a bed for a long time, I guess throughout that whole year. And it started feeling massively this small vacuum cleaner bag, and then the bag itself was transformed into a porcelain pillow.
And you have stated many times that you draw inspiration from Alejandro Jodorowsky. Can you talk about your love affair with his work?
Oh my God, the first time I saw The Holy Mountain, I think I was just in a state of shock. Every time someone would talk about this film prior to seeing it, everyone was like, oh, you have to take mushrooms or smoke something or whatever. And I did not, but it felt like I was on a trip. And you could really see with him that he has a whole way of thinking and conceiving of all of these scenes for both lucid dreaming and these very specific kind of almost meditative processes that felt really bold and just so singular to his vision. So I think, even though my work is, maybe the colors or the kind of richness of it can relate a little bit to what he does in film, I think just that kind of singularity of his vision, how much he trusted that and never compromised, was something that felt really inspiring, and I kind of keep coming back to it. I've seen some of these films like Autopa and Santa Sagre and The Holy Mountain many, many times at this point, because there's just something every time that feels fresh and very true to life in a way as well.
And when did you start making films as references for your paintings? Has that always been your go-to?
I was thinking a lot about um, how to incorporate moving image into my work early on. Even when I was doing my BFA in Germany, I think that was the first time when I was like properly thinking about film as like something that I wanted to be, actively involved in. And like I was really kind of considering actually studying film as like a film director, or just trying to get my foot into this like totally different industry in a sense. But it felt kind of wrong in a sense. I was aware to some extent that I wasn't really that excited about making the actual film, but that logic of how you approach time and how it's like recut, and like how the world is, the world building aspect of it was really something that was intriguing to me. So when I ended up doing the MFA at Goldsmiths, I was already thinking of ways of how I could bring in footage in some sort of way into my work without actually working with video or like film as a medium. The show I did in Vienna in 21 was the first time where I actually went on location, which was this kind of short stay 2-star hotel in central London, shot everything in the space and kind of reconstructed the space in the gallery in Vienna, and used the sound that was recorded during that time period as the soundtrack for the show.
When did you start to envision Vandas?
I think Vandas came to me when I was researching this area of West London, right close to Notting Hill. There's this massive flyover, it's called the Westway, which is very iconic from just like a perspective of like as an architectural piece. It's this massive brutalist kind of flyover that J.G. Ballard was actually obsessed with. I didn't know that until later on, but he wrote both Crash and Concrete Island based off of like this location. So the interesting thing for me was that both this was architecturally really interesting to look at, but on the other hand, there were all these mechanics, like car workshops, sports centers, all these different like communities, centers as well, and so on, clustered around the Westway. And that became my focus of interest because these communities were so interesting and they were like existing in such a specific bubble. The first time I came across a group of taxi drivers underneath the Westway flyover in this car park, I started thinking about them as like one entity and one sort of like group of protagonists, and then Vanda on the other hand, which is actually a fictional character that a friend of mine, an artist that I studied with at Goldsmiths, Jean-Francois Krebs, developed while we were still at Goldsmiths, and he was telling me about Vanda because Vanda is a character from Venus in Furs that he adapted as like a combination of him and his sister.
You mentioned the taxis. When we were preparing for this interview, you told us about what it was like to shoot those taxis going into the parking garage. You blew my mind with that fact you dropped about Seinfeld not being able to film in a real parking garage because it's so expensive, and the mirrors in that episode. Can you tell us about your stakeout and basically give us that story of the staking out of the parking garage and how you moved everyone through it and everything like that?
I first went the official route because I was also inexperienced with, filmmaking and like what it means to like shoot on locations. So when I started like asking around to all these like official people from the municipality or whatever if we could shoot there, we immediately started running into problems. And then at some point I was just like, okay, but Werner Herzog said, like forge the documents and just do it. So I was like, ding. I guess we should just find a way to do it. We were practicing and observing and like tracking the movement and like the whole like behavioral patterns of the security guards on the premises for probably 3 months until we nailed it to the T. We basically figured out that on a certain day, I think it was over the weekend, there was like the largest gap between the gates getting like properly shut for everyone, because at some point the car parks just closed for the night, and the security guard doing the final round. So we had like about 45 minutes, and I was like, okay, I think we can do it. It's gonna be nuts, but we're gonna get 5 taxi drivers, 2 large Great Danes, myself, and the rest of like, I think it was like a cast of other like, I don't know, like quite a lot of people. Like,
There's quite a crowd in that last scene.
oh yeah. That crowd was, I think, about 20 people. That was on a different day, but again, same thing. We used that like principle of like, okay, this is our time. But especially with the taxi drivers, it was really stressful, because the thing is, with the crowd, we were right in front of the entrance. So even if it closed, whatever, fine. But with the taxi drivers, we were inside the car park, and that was the bit that was difficult, because, you know, also like shows like Seinfeld and kind of like big productions often can't afford to just block off a whole day or whatever time they need to shoot within the car park, because you have all these people paying for the park, you have all these like cars that are insured, blah, blah. It just like, it becomes massively difficult to do anything. So the only way to do it was to basically just do it.
To maintain sort of, not anonymity, but to maintain a low profile, you don't often film with a full camera build, do you?
The whole idea for me is to use very consumer-friendly products, small cameras, phones, small camcorders, anything that feels like it's kind of a joke. People I work with are often like not actors. They're just like people from the community that I'm interested in, like their stories and what they have to say, or what they have to like add to the narrative that I'm constructing. I feel like when you're able to remove that idea of like, okay, this is very serious, and now you know you have to perform in front of the lens, you get much better results, and also it's much easier to move around as well. Because if we had like insane equipment and we had to bring all of that into that space in the car park within 45 minutes, I mean, we'd never make it. Before we'd set up, it'd be all over. But even that, I kind of like the bad quality of things. I mean, even like the grain is just, you know, it's by definition just like not, it's bad definition. Yeah.
And you make Vondas, and it's great. We were very lucky to get to see it in preparing for this.
You're one of the rare people that saw it, because it's only the people that came to the closing day of the show that saw the film. It's like once in a lifetime.
Because otherwise,
and you,
yeah.
that's it.
Which thank you to Nicoletti Contemporary for providing that for us. But you showed the film the rest of the time facing the wall.
Yeah.
And particularly, I'm very interested in like the crosses that you had going across the multiple monitors. What makes you not want to show your works? Like, you show your paintings, but your film works to the public widely.
Well, it didn't make any sense to me to work with this logic of moving image and then show the moving image as well. Because if I'm like faithful to that idea of like thinking about time and like reconstruction and editing within painting and sound separate, then why show film as well? It served as a light installation and a sound installation, basically. That's where the score came from. That's where you would hear all the kind of like background sounds of like people just like moving. The highway itself has like a very specific soundscape. So all of these things like added to the show and were like actively a part of the whole thing, but they, you know, it was more about like bringing in that atmosphere than like specifically showing you something that is already kind of like reconstructed in the paintings.
Nana, I want to dive into your most recent series, Breed, the one that I met you when you were doing. How did your interest in surveillance push you to film at the angle of a dog's collar? Because when you lived in London, you became fascinated with these members clubs. Can you tell me about the angle and also the filming location for the base film for that work?
Yeah, so the show that was really diving into the whole like surveillance aspect was the show at Liste, but the show that was kind of like looking at the idea of members clubs as like a restriction of access and these dogs that are really like sort of pampered, and you see all around Upper East Side like getting, you know, pedicures and walked in nice little coats and eating sashimi off of like a plate at a restaurant. They were really kind of like the focal point of that show in a sense, because, you know, in terms of, let's say, their position spatially, they're on the ground or in a purse or whatever, but so kind of like low and close to the floor, but hierarchically speaking, they occupy quite like an important position within these like spaces, and these families, they're treated as like another family member proper. I bought this tiny camera that's used for, I guess, like sports primarily, but also, you know, if you just want to like record what your dog is like, you know, doing on a fun day outside, like fetching a ball or whatever, and attached it to the collar and kind of like kept that perspective as the inspiration, or like the kind of like POV that we follow throughout the show as management. The whole idea of like surveillance, especially through Ring cameras, was something that I got quite fascinated with, because we don't really think of intercom systems as surveillance necessarily, but they're installed, especially Ring cameras, like all over the place now, and they kind of function as these like self-regulatory systems where like neighbors will report on like suspicious activities within WhatsApp group chats or neighbors app, or all these different places now where basically gated communities are created within these like smaller social groups. It's not necessarily a gate that's preventing an entrance or an existence within a certain space, but more so these kind of like interconnected online systems that we never really like consider as like some kind of a sort of a threat, but they're constantly recording even when you're not ringing the camera. Like that's how they often find footage when they're looking through like a crime case and they're trying to like locate an action that happened right in front of the house. Sometimes it's like a random house right next to it that like caught something for a split second that helps them like solve the case. So they're definitely around and just constantly present. But the show with management was focused on the aspect of access. If like the surveillance is kind of like this overpowering sort of all-reaching access through any sort of like gadget we use with a camera nowadays, then Breed, the show at management, was looking more at this idea of restriction of access through like either like old school kind of like gated communities, or these like doorman buildings on Upper East Side that are like so iconic to like even like the Gossip Girl and all of these like shows from like the thousands, or even like Cribs or The Lifestyles of Rich and Famous. I feel like when I was growing up, it was right at the time of that kind of like onset of reality TV, and this whole idea of like peeking behind the gates or looking into a space or an environment that you don't have access to. And I feel like nowadays, even on social media, we still have this fascination with like the lifestyles that we maybe necessarily don't occupy. So it felt kind of fun to like give access to a place that feels very exclusive and sort of like lavish and particular, but through a perspective that doesn't really reveal much because it's so close to the floor and just, you know, limited in a sense, even though privileged.
You are shared by two galleries, Nicoletti Contemporary in London and Management Gallery here in America. Do you find that your gallerists ever have dueling desires for your career?
That they would sort of like have different ideas of where.
Yeah.
Well, that is yet to be, you know, found out in a sense, because it's like such a young and like beginning stage collaboration. I think so far I felt like between Anton and Osvaldo there's like a really nice energy, and like they're able to like talk through things even when there's like maybe a bump in the road, which is a good sign to me. And like none of them are like, you know, very difficult and complicated people. I mean, they're opinionated and they have, you know, they stand their own ground, but they're not like, at the end of the day, they care about the artist profoundly, both of them. And I think in that way, I've been really lucky to encounter people throughout my career that I kind of developed like a long-term relationship with, like Osvaldo and Anton, that really have that proper focus on the artist and what is the best next step in their career and just supporting that. So we'll see, you know, that's the thing, you know, you can only predict so much so early on.
And we're looking forward to seeing these paintings behind us at their their presentation together of you at the Independent this year, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see that hopefully by the time this episode comes out. What's next for Nana Wolke? What blanks do you want to fill in the art world?
Oof. Well, the Swedish project is a big thing that I really feel excited about. It's going to be done in collaboration with the community in Stockholm that lives in the Millen program. I'm particularly interested in working with kids from the neighborhood. It's just a project that speaks to like how I grew up, and now sort of after developing my own career and kind of like having that affirming experience of like, oh, a person like me can also be an art professional and be a part of this world and like participate. I want to give that sort of perspective to the kids as well and have them be like a part of this project actively, not just like directing them like I've maybe done with some of my other projects, but really have them actively kind of like influence the course of the project, which, you know, is going to take more time, and it's maybe like an open-ended project in a sense, in comparison to some of like my other things that I've been working on, but it feels like something that's important for me and my work at this stage. And you know, just a general like takeover of the world, you know, Powerpuff Girl style. Yeah, that's the plan.
And tell people where they can find you online.
At Nana Wolke, IG, and yeah, I don't know.
Instagram, and also your website's the same thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I guess there is a website as well.
With a awesome, I love your logo.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thanks to David Toucher, graphic designer and a very good friend of mine. Yeah.
And thank you all so much for joining us. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you're on Spotify, please comment and follow. Give us 5 stars. Follow us on Instagram at fillingtheblankshow and TikTok at fillingtheblank. Find us online at fillingtheblank.co. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nana. And thank you all for watching. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.